From WAMU 88.5, American University in Washington, welcome to the Politics Hour starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Konamdi. You can actually watch the Politics Hour if you go to our website, kojoshow.org. You'll see the live video stream there, and you will see Tom Sherwood. He is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom Sherwood, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Also in studio with us, you can see him also at our live video stream as our guest analyst, Mike DeBonis. He's a reporter at the Washington Post. Mike DeBonis, welcome.
Better fix my hair.
Yes, now it's on television.
Thanks, Kojo.
You can't dress for radio anymore. Also joining us in studio is Phil Mendelson. He is the chairman of the D.C. Council. He is a Democrat. Council Chairman Mendelson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
And I guess the first thing we have to talk about is the sudden and unexpected death of David Carr, the former editor of City Paper and then a writer for the New York Times. He apparently collapsed in the newsroom yesterday and died later on. As I said, it is a complete surprise to everyone. But in this town where David Carr was editor of City Paper and hired a number of now very well-known reporters around the country, everybody in this town has a story about David Carr. But before we get to the stories about David Carr told by others, let's listen to a little bit about David Carr talking about David Carr when he visited with us in 2009.
I mean, I'd like you to think that I was, a nice man who got custody of his kids and got his children off welfare and ended up with this good job at the New York Times. And that's, if we were on a date, Kojo, that's the story I would tell you. But that wouldn't be the whole story, would it?
And indeed, it is not the whole story. That was a 2008 interview. David Carr told a lot of the story when he conducted a journalistic investigation of the drug-scarred life of David Carr himself, in which he actually talked to other people who were involved with him at that time and got their impressions, their memories of exactly what happened and compared them with his own. But Tom Sherwood, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on David Carr.
Well, I was telling Mike Bonus, I still have a letter from 1996 when he was City Paper editor, and he wanted to do a story about me as a reporter who seemed to be able to report, comment, and advocate. And he thought that, I don't know what he really thought. And it was a cajoling letter, and it was but he warned me in this letter. He said, I'll be very nice in reporting this story, but I might, and I cannot say what he says in the letter, but he says, I might staple you. I'll use part of the phrase once I've done all the reporting. Now I'm here today because that City Paper story was never done.
He agreed not to do this.
No, we somehow it didn't happen. But can I just briefly say what Michael Schaefer, who's the editor of the Washingtonian and was also an editor of the City Paper,
was hired by David Carr.
Right, and he has written a very nice piece that he's tweeted out today. But just one of it, he says of Carr, he could scream and kick ass and terrify, sure, but he also had this very deft sense of what would motivate each individual. And that showed through in all the writing he did. So it's nice of Michael to have written that. I'm going to retweet that.
His hiring was good. And of course, Mike DeBonis is a City Paper alumnus himself.
I never worked for David Carr. I worked for people who worked for David Carr. And who shared some of his characteristics. I say I didn't work for David, but I feel like I did because his spirit had so suffused that newspaper. Even when I started 2004, it'd been gone for 7-8 years, but it still felt like David Carr's paper. Even though Eric Wemple was the editor, it felt like his paper, and I think that's still true today. And I only met him a couple times, but knowing that my friends and the people I worked with, and knowing how devastated they are by this, and just having read his journalism, even before he was Mr. New York Times, his media columns. And I mean, I'm just remembering pieces. I remember a piece that he wrote when he just complained, before it was cool to complain about Comcast. He wrote this article about how terrible Comcast was, and he was trying to get the cable done on his house in AU Park. And I was looking for that piece and I couldn't find it, but he's just his writing is, was just so terrific, and just his personality is really what us reporters aspire to be.
That's why he became a media columnist for the New York Times. He saw ahead of his time, so to speak. Any memories at all, Phil Mendelson, of David Carr?
I did not know him, and so I do not have any stories to share. Clearly, though, it was quite upsetting and shocking.
If, of course, David Carr was writing while Phil Mendelson was chair of the council, he would know him very well.
Got some memories, yes.
I think he was on CBS or the radio today on the radio station was reporting this death, and then it was followed by something like a story about 200 stranded whales, and I thought Carr would like that juxtaposition.
Just this past Monday, we had Eric Wemple on the show talking about the Brian Williams situation at NBC, and in interviewing Eric, I quoted David Carr saying that we expect so much from our news anchors these days. We expect them to be truthful and honest, but we also expect them to be entertainers. And Eric Wemple's response was, I love David Carr. He's a former colleague of mine, but I think that's full of hooey, what he just said, which is an indication of the kind of relationship they had then and now. I guess the best we can say at this point is rest in peace, David Carr. Speaking of former city paper reporters, it is my understanding, Mike DeBonis, that you are moving on from the local beat at the Washington Post.
It's hardly the most consequential piece of media news this week, but I am somewhat regretful, I have to say that yes, my name has been called, my number has come up, my shoulder has been tapped, and I'll be going to the somewhat less august confines of the United States Capitol.
You're going to cover Congress as a group. How many reporters from the Post are up there?
There's three really full-time folks right now. Right. Paul Kane, just really awesome, just tremendous, one of the greats who have ever reported on the Capitol. Ed O'Keefe and Sean Sullivan are up there, and I'll be joining them as some of them sort of move out to cover the campaigns in 2016. And I'm just really the only thing that really convinced me to do is just being a part of a team like that.
Will we stake out territory? Will you stake out the big picture of Congress, or will you take issues? Or?
We're still figuring that out. I think what I've heard from my colleague is that swinging things up by issues is usually what works best. Creating silos are a bad word in this modern management age, and picking one house or one party to cover is I guess not worked out too well. So you learn about stuff and find stuff out and tell people about it.
Can Phil Mendelson look forward in the future to you leaving him the heck alone?
Yeah, his cell phone will bring a lot less friction.
Oh, good. I'm sure he's very happy.
Mike wasn't too bad. I knew how to deal with it.
He was bad. He just wasn't too bad.
That's my fault.
If you have questions or comments for Council Chairman Phil Mendelson, give us a call at 800-433-8850. Send us a tweet at Kojo Show, email to kojo@wamu.org, or you can go to our website and watch the live video stream at kojoshow.org. I will let Tom Sherwood begin the questioning today.
With the chairman, or are we still on mic? I have a few questions about the internal workings of the Post.
Can we get to the chairman, please?
Are you still under litigation, by the way?
No, I lost that case. But just to be clear to the viewers who don't know what and listeners who we're talking about, as the union chairman of the union at the Post for 2 years, we sued the Post for its horrendous overtime policies. And after a 10-year case, we lost in court.
And that was like 8 years after you'd left the Post?
But I've been at Channel 4 for 25 years, Mr. Chairman, so it was quite a while ago that I was at...
I would just note, Tom, that we are amid a contract negotiation right now, so if you want to show up at the table, I'm sure that would...
Can we get to the questions for the chairman?
Let's get to marijuana, Mr. Chairman. On Monday, the three committees hold a hearing to discuss how to regulate and tax marijuana once it becomes legal in this city. And the Attorney General, Carl Racine, in one of his first major moves, wrote a letter to the council saying, don't hold the hearing. If you do, you may be violating the law because Congress has said you can't do anything to enact this marijuana law. You had a meeting with the three council committee chairmen, and they came out and they didn't hold a hearing, but they held a meeting. When is the city going to stand up to Congress over its right to rule itself?
Well, let me remind you, since you phrased the question that way, that we're in court. We're in court right now with regard to budget autonomy, and so we look for opportunities where we can advance home rule, self-determination, the rights of the citizens of the district, which ought to be the same as the rights of the citizens of all of the United States. We look for all those opportunities. I think in your question, you seem to feel that a hearing on Monday morning at the Wilson Building is a major territory to stake out our issues with Congress. I wouldn't agree, but that's not what it's about. When I met with the committee chairs, it was a joint hearing of three committees. The issue was how does everybody feel? Because the three chairs were not in agreement, and but except for this, we all felt that we should, whatever we do, we should all agree on. So it was trying to find what that point of agreement was, and as far as I'm concerned, our options are open for how we proceed with regard to marijuana. We're actually in a poor place, in the sense that the initiative is going to go into effect later this month, but we seem to be precluded from regulating around the issue of marijuana. And that means that we're going to have a drug that is legitimate, not a criminal to possess or to use in small quantities, but the use of any kind of drug is regulated, whether it's tobacco or it's alcohol, and we have no regulations around this. And that's why I say we're in a poor place, because Congress seems to have tied our hands with how to actually enable that the initiative goes into effect efficiently, but it will go into effect.
Right, that's what Mike Bonus will be covering the Congress. I don't understand. It's, people voted for the initiative on November the 4th, and the city says that enacted the marijuana laws. It's completing the 30-day legislative review period, which you referred to, at the end of this month. And therefore, the city's position from the mayor, she said it just the other day again, in your position, is that the people enacted that marijuana law, and marijuana will be 2 ounces or less, and some plants will be legal, but you can't buy or sell it, can't open a retail store, can't be on federal property. That's going into effect, but the congressional action last fall does mean you can't tax or regulate it. So
yeah, and
there's no conversations with, you have had no conversations with members of Congress. Apparently the mayor hasn't. What's going to happen when on the day it becomes legal? The mayor said she will talk to Chief Lanier about not arresting people.
Well, what's going to happen is I think we're going to find that there's going to be some confusion with some activity, and that's going to be increasingly a problem. Any normal society would proceed with some sort of regulation around this. You say tax and regulate. Well, other states have taxed, and maybe that's where we would eventually go. To me, it's more about regulating to ensure that whether any areas of confusion with implementation, that we work those out. That
is this a problem that is best settled in the political realm, in the judicial realm? I mean,
Well, it will get resolved in the judicial realm, because I think sooner or later some defendant's going to go to court. And we will start seeing some judicial opinions with regard to this. Let me just remind folks that what we're dealing with is an initiative that was adopted. It's now up on the Hill. It's going to become law. In the 11th hour, maybe even at 11:55, meaning last December, in the middle of a 1,000-page bill to fund the entire government, there's a paragraph that was, I would say, hastily written, and they didn't really think it through. And they said that no funds could be spent to enact or to carry out.
Essentially,
we took the position that the law has already been enacted.
Well, of course it was.
But what I don't understand is why
of course it was. But it was enacted as soon as the voters, because there was nothing left. The council didn't have to vote, and the mayor didn't have to vote. All of our bills were enacted when the council votes and the mayor signs. In this case, it was initiative. So when the board certified.
Well, assuming that, making the fairly safe assumption that Congress is not going to disapprove and the president is going to sign a resolution disapproving of the statute. My question is, when we have legal marijuana in the city and everyone sees the unregulated legal marijuana, like you said, what do you think Congress is going to do? Are they just going to sit back? Are they going to try and kill it entirely then at that point? Or are they going to step back and say, well, maybe we should let the city handle this like we let them handle a lot of other things?
I don't have a clear picture what Congress is going to do. I think a reason why the language is so poorly written, the congressional language, is because Congress was divided. And there were many members of Congress who said, no, we don't want to go in this area. And that's why the language was not more clear or more directive. So what are they going to do going forward? I tend to think that given what we're seeing across the country with different states decriminalizing, that Congress is not going to overturn the initiative.
Well, Mr. Chairman, what I can understand all of what may or may not happen. What I don't quite understand, unless they're happening and I don't know about them, there are no conversations. I mean, the mayor, she had a meeting on the Hill yesterday with Jerry
Connolly,
gets the name wrong, from Virginia, and the chairman of the subcommittee. There's been no word that anything was discussed. You haven't reached out to the Hill. You don't have a liaison to the Hill, I guess, with Ms. Norton. Why isn't there more leadership discussion about this rather than waiting to the 11th hour?
I'm not. There's a criticism in your question, and I'm not sure that criticism is fair.
I don't mean to criticize, but I mean, you're the chairman of the council.
Yeah, I know. There have been efforts by both the mayor's office, Vince Gray, and now Muriel Bowser, and by my office to reach out to the Hill on this.
And they don't return your phone call?
Well, that's for a number of members. Yes, that's true.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's see. I mean,
that's true.
The impression I get is that no one, aside from Andy Harris and a couple of other people who really care about this marijuana issue, nobody on the Hill really wants to deal with it. John Boehner doesn't really care.
I think you're right.
Marijuana.
I think
he
you're
said,
right.
When we asked his staff about it, what he said, "Oh, I care about school vouchers. I want that. That's my issue that I care about. I really don't care about marijuana."
Well, we should all get ready to grow our marijuana plants then.
I use the metaphor with regard to home rule, because I want to take this issue just to expand it a little bit. For a century, the district was struggling with the fact that we had appointed commissioners and no elected representation, whatever. And the home rule movement culminated with the Home Rule Act in 1973. And prior to that, the commissioners of the district had a relationship with the key members of Congress dealing with the district. When the commissioners needed something, they could talk to those key members of Congress. It was not a good system in my view, but there was a relationship. And when the commissioners needed something, they went up to the Hill, knocked on the door, and there was a conversation. Congress gave us home rule. They didn't want to give us everything, but once they gave us what they gave us, it's almost as if they turned their back. And now when we knock on the door, nobody answers. Yes, my office has reached out to a number of members of Congress to try to set up meetings, and they don't respond.
There are individuals on the phone who want to talk about this issue. So don your headphones, please. I will start with Ryan in Washington. Ryan, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you for taking my call, Kojo. I guess my question and or comment is that, the marijuana issue, like nationally, has in all three areas has been decided by the power of the vote and the power of the people. And since all of these people in a republic are elected by the people, I don't understand why or how they would even come close to overruling what has been voted on. And, so I think it's it's a very dangerous situation for them to even be, debating it. And I understand that the district situation is trying to
go ahead
a little bit, with them not really having enough authority. But once again, in the Constitution, it never has said anything about statehood. Now, people that elect to live in Washington,
we know all of the arguments that you're making. Allow me to put a question related to that to Councilmember Mendelson, because when we had this conversation earlier in the week on It's Your Turn, one of the callers said, well, if the Congress do this, why is it so bad? The people voted for term limits in the District of Columbia, and the council simply decided to ignore that. What would you say, Phil Mendelson?
I'm not sure.
Why should the Congress be any more responsible than the body of which you're a member?
I think we all should strive to be responsive. So I'm not quite sure how to answer that question.
Well, it happened.
I think part of what's behind the caller's question is why is it that Congress gets by ignoring where the will of the people is, and this is what we're seeing in national politics. This is one of those social issues where conservatives are trying to what do I want to say, make strikes and see if they can get more votes. And the way districts are drawn are such that a lot of these folks, they play well to their constituents.
Well, there's no doubt the Constitution of the United States says the Congress shall have, quote, full legislative authority over the district.
Correct.
So the 535 members ultimately can do anything they want to the district under the Constitution. But it just seems to me, I have yet to see the passion. Josh Birch, who's the statehood advocate, I mean, he asked, where is the passion? Where is let's stand up. Let's have the Congress come down and march our staffers, those who want to hold a hearing. Let them march them out of the Wilson building in handcuffs or something. Why not have some dramatic say that you may not like the marijuana bill, but telling us we can't go forward, we do not accept it. The medical marijuana was delayed a decade or more. We did needle exchanges for the critical drug abuse problems in the city. We were not allowed to have needle exchanges. The city can't spend money for abortion because people in the Congress don't like it. I mean, at what point, why not pick one of those issues even and just say, we are Americans and we should stand up for this. And if you're going to bully us, you're going to have to do it in the full glare of public eye, not in some back committee meeting room. I mean, where's the passion?
I think what you're saying is a little different than what the caller was saying. I think the caller was getting at the caller was getting at the process. And why is it?
Well, we're going to drown in process.
Well, who are you talking about? Congress or?
I think the whole city at this point.
Well, Bill, I think Andrea in Washington, who has been waiting for a while, has a broad question about this. Andrea, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for taking my call. My call is actually for both the chairman and Mike DeBonis. In an obituary for Marion Barry, New Yorker editor David Remnick, himself a former Washington Post reporter, wrote about D.C. Developers and political technocrats run the city for the most part. As a disillusioned opponent of many of the concessions by the city to developers, without regard for community input, and I'm thinking about Kojo's favorite, McMillan Park, I wonder where the political technocrats are. My question to Chairman Mendelson and Mr. DeBonis is, would you say Remnick's analysis is correct? And if not, why not?
I'll allow the chairman to respond.
It's an opinion, and it's an opinion shared by a lot of folks, but I'm not sure I agree with it. There seems to be, underlying your question, a viewpoint about McMillan Reservoir and the development there. And as I have said to folks who are unhappy with the development, that to a large extent, it's a political question, one of convincing representatives that their view, meaning the opponent's view, is the right one and ought to be the one that's followed. You may feel very strongly that what the city is doing in trying to develop that parcel is a mistake. I think what City Hall has heard is a divided community, and meanwhile, a process that, although some folks disagree with the outcome, the process seems to be one that has proceeded with some time and deliberation toward an outcome that would see that project developed.
Well, it's never going to end in the minds of some people. This is the Politics Hour. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Our guest analyst is Mike DeBonis. He's a reporter for the Washington Post. Our guest is Phil Mendelson, chairman of the D.C. Council. You can call us at 800-433-8850 if you have questions for Council Chairman Mendelson. You can also go to our website, watch the live video stream at kojoshow.org. WMATA and the NTSB are starting to draw some conclusions about the smoke incident and fatal accident that occurred in January. The NTSB is now saying that the smoke dispersal system for Metro did not work properly on that day. The smoke should have been going in one way and going out the other way. Instead, it was going in both ways and therefore left a cloud above the train. Do you think the Metro system has lost public trust with this incident? What kind of measures, if any, do you think need to be taken to regain that trust?
I choose a slightly different phrasing. Rather than has the public lost trust, it's that the reaction, which has been extensive and prolonged, reveals the fact that people are really upset with where WMATA is in terms of safety and reliability.
How about you?
The incident has struck a chord with people across the region and with leaders that WMATA is not managing its system in an acceptable way. I have a lot of concern about Metro. I do ride the trains from time to time, and I'm not afraid to ride the trains from time to time. But that does not mean that the sense of safety is as good as it needs to be and should be.
The National Transportation, I'm sorry.
It's just hard to believe that something as you would think as simple as exhausting the tunnels got confused and bollocksed up.
Well, so much of the conversation that happens, especially in the local jurisdictions that make up Metro, revolves around money. And that's what gets talked about, because that's the leverage that the jurisdiction seems to have, is whether they're going to pony up the subsidy every year. But doesn't the conversation need to be beyond that? Do we need to get the mayor and the chairman of the council going to Metro meetings and telling the Metro board, listen, we're not going to take it anymore? Because all that ever, sort of the accountability doesn't flow to elected officials. It flows to this to an appointed board who might be elected officials, might not, and it sort of feels like that the voice of the writers, the voice of the public here gets never really gets sort of represented.
Diffused.
Well, there's a governing structure, and we can't override that governing structure. However, I've had several conversations with the mayor. I know the Mayor Bowser, is very concerned about the stability and continuity, the leadership at Metro. There is a search right now for a general manager, and she feels very strongly that this is a critical point for finding a good general manager who's going to essentially turn around that organization. The finances are important. It's not just a question of that Metro once again needs, is asking the jurisdictions to come up with even more money, or they're going to be service cuts, although I think that's important, and I don't want to minimize it. And I think that the jurisdictions have been underfunding Metro for years, but there's
the federal government.
There's a level of disorganization or bureaucracy, not just bureaucracy, hidebound bureaucracy, that has produced such inefficiency, and that's kind of stating it too nicely, that we have incidents like the woman who died in the smoke-filled tunnel.
But the sense is in the jurisdictions, the attitude seems to be, we got problems to deal with of our own. Metro's got problems; they're not our problems. We're going to sort of leave Metro to deal with them, and we'll shake our finger.
I don't think that's the attitude at the Wilson Building. The conversations I've had with Mayor Bowser is not that. It is not like that.
And what concrete sort of consequences of that do you think we might see?
She is going to take an active role, even though she's not on the board and therefore a decision maker. But she's going to take an active role in the
Council of
general
Governments
manager
weigh in on who might be leadership, because if you talk to people within Metro and they talk about the hidebound, as you say, management of the place. The people complain that the unions contracts are not good, that you cannot adjust the workforce as you need to because there's too much union power, and unions only as powerful as the contract allows them to be. It just seems like such a horrible mess. 47 years Metro's been in place, and they don't know how to blow smoke out of tunnels. I mean, it sounds to me like we knew a Michelle Reed type makeover of Metro.
The council chairman only has about 5 minutes left. So
I think they've grown fat and happy, and we're seeing the consequence of that, which is deferred maintenance and a inability to respond with adroitness when there's a major incident such as it.
So what kind of executive leader does Metro need? I mean, what do you want to see in the next general manager?
I think
And
somebody
Alan
who
Lou's
could,
been in the mix for
Right, and
possibly
feel free to
you want-
float some
that's
names
what I'm
here.
gonna say.
Well,
In the mix, would you think Alan Lou would be the type of manager Metro would need?
I think that Metro needs a manager who has experience in transportation, but and more importantly, experience with running a large bureaucracy, and possibly more importantly than that, has the skill and a track record of being a turnaround, basically a turnaround artist.
Last winter,
I
the
think, what
district
they need.
struggled to help the homeless find more permanent solutions to escape the cold. Yesterday, Mayor Bowser introduced a new plan to help identify and provide housing for the homeless more effectively. What do you think of that proposed plan? And will it be supplemented with more short-term solutions?
Well, I don't mean any criticism in this, but I don't know that it's fair to describe it as a new plan. Basically, it was a step, and the step was to hire and employ what she's calling navigators to get people, particularly homeless families, out of the homeless system and into housing. We, the government, the mayor, the former mayor, the council, we added to the mayor's budget with regard to housing options, funding for local rent supplement, for example, funding for permanent supportive housing units. These are all best practices, but it's pretty clear that what's happening is that there are more families coming into the system than are going out. And not just that inequality, but that too few people are going. It's basically a trickle that's going out while it's a
There's no
flood
shock to
coming
that.
in.
That's
There's no what?
There's no shock to that. People, there warnings about what was happening in homelessness has been going on for years, and everyone was predicting that we were going to have all these additional
Yes, they
people.
were.
And the candidates for mayor said, "Oh, I'm going to take care of it, top to bottom review, whatever." And then one of the first things they did was try to go in the court to change the ground rules, and then they
Yes, and that was a
pulled back.
mistake.
And they
And
pulled
that was
back
a
from
mistake. But
So,
we have,
well, we are trying to achieve something that's not achievable.
we've changed the oversight at the council, and we have a new mayor. I believe that there is new energy in this government to deal with the problem.
But
Is it unsolvable? No, it is not. I had a hearing on this a week ago, and it was described as essentially a housing problem. It's a little more than that, because a lot of these folks need social services that will help get them back.
But it's the
on their feet.
basic law that says, and whenever there's a emergency, the temperature's below 32 degrees, whatever the law states, is that every person in the city,
No, every family.
every family is entitled to shelter. Is that a mistake? What other jurisdiction has that?
There are other jurisdictions. They are
Okay.
very few in number,
I
but
can't
that
even
has,
think of one.
Tom, but that's also been the law since the 1980s, and we didn't have this crisis for a while. I think it's more how we have handled it in the last few years.
May I
And-
just take a moment, because I'm getting a lot of tweets on the issue about standing up to Congress over the marijuana matter. People are saying, "Why don't you make Mendo answer the question? What about if you
Dr.
can't,
Kojo.
if you don't get the members of Congress to return your phone calls?" It seems to me that's another reason to strike the match of a more.
How
boastful-
far are you willing to go
Yeah.
to see that Initiative 71 will be enacted and enforced? So are you willing to be arrested for it?
And I don't want you to be arrested. I just want.
Are you willing?
Thank you. Well, as somebody who was arrested for civil disobedience a couple of decades ago, yes, I'm willing to get arrested, but I think there has to be. It has to be strategic so that there's actually some gain that comes out of that. If the question is, what am I going to do to make sure that Initiative 71 is enacted? 71 is enacted. It's going to be the law. It will not be criminal to possess a small amount of marijuana. How do we get regulations in place? I don't know. In Tom's question earlier, there seemed to be, well, why don't we just make the law? We can't
No,
make any
you-
law that is not valid. And that's a question of
No, I'm not
just what we
characterizing you
think.
do anything that's not valid.
Okay.
The passion aspect that I'm getting from people is that the process is drowning the city. The Congress has said,
Which process?
Well,
Because, this is the
not
quest
holding
for,
the hearing Monday.
the quest
Right.
for statehood. The quest for statehood is one that's gone on for decades, and I don't think we have found the right strategy. My own belief is that this is something where we need to be finding ways to make this a national issue. Probably the most dramatic thing that we did was a few years ago when the former mayor and I think 40 elected officials got arrested.
Well, some of them
that
were
was
just
pretty-
warming
well,
up.
I-
for
what
some-
could
That
I
was
was
more
pretty-
dramatic than being
That's
openly confronting Congress and saying, listen, we know it's illegal and we're going to do it anyway.
So we need to find the right strategy. What's illegal? Having the hearing?
Yeah,
or
why not
passing
have the
bill?
hearing? Why not have
Why
the
not
hearing?
have the hearing?
And why is the Attorney General even weighing in on this and a matter before the council?
It's okay for him to warn you that it might violate the law, but so
Guys.
what?
Guys, I'm getting this from two sides, those who can't see on the radio.
That's right.
Well, why did the Attorney General weigh in? Because somebody asked him to. I didn't ask him to.
He said
Do I
his,
agree with
his
you,
staff
too?
said
And
three
so-
staffs asking, three
No.
council members. But I
No,
don't want to go
I
to
don't
the
believe that's
process.
correct.
I want to stop at process. I understand there are rules and procedures and all that. But what I think I'm hearing from the people who could talk to me is that why not confront? That is, stop the process. Even David Grosso, the council member, has suggested maybe we should just offer and say, here, Congress, take back home rule. Now, he knows that's a fairly radical thing to say, but he says, why not just give back? You want to run the city? Run the damn city. But not
This
just
is the
kind of
final
piecemeal.
answer.
Well, I'm not
He's gotta
prepared
go.
to. I'm not prepared to do that. I happen to agree that if we can find something that's dramatic, we should do it. But not just drama for the sake of drama.
Right.
It's drama that actually advances the ball, and we haven't done that. And I think there's some folks who feel as though, well, we should just go out and stop traffic on Connecticut Avenue today, and I don't think that's going to do it.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have. The council chairman has a tight schedule. Phil Mendelson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Coach.
Ooh, where are you
Phil
going?
Mendelson is chairman of the DC Council. He is a Democrat. You're listening to the Politics Hour. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Mike DeBonis is our guest analyst today. He is a reporter at the Washington Post, and it is my understanding, Mike DeBonis, that this morning you were covering the trial of Christopher or Marion Christopher Barry for the incident that occurred at the bank on 7th Street.
Nothing so dramatic as a trial. It was a routine status hearing, but it was dramatic in the sense that Marion Christopher Barry is seeking the council seat held by his father, Marion Barry, and it's not good when you're running for office and you have to be standing in front of a judge and talking about perhaps.
Why isn't that good?
That's true. I mean, it worked for his father in many circumstances, so I suppose that it's not necessarily a demerit in this case. But I'm sure that there are other things he would have rather been doing this morning.
Well, I have a
Perhaps-
report in my hands by you and my friend Keith Alexander, who is saying that the prosecutors have been offering him or have offered him a plea deal in this bank assault case.
Yeah, the prosecutor stood up this morning and said, "Hey, we've offered him a plea deal, plead guilty to these misdemeanor charges of making threats and destroying property." The problem for Christopher is that he's on probation now for offenses last year, fairly serious offenses, and if he accepts a plea, he's looking at jail time. He's looking at a serious sentence that he had previously avoided, and he's telling me he's serious about this campaign. He wants to finish out his father's term and continue on in his seat, and you really can't do that from a jail cell.
So if he
Mr.
accepts
Morrissey
this-
in Virginia aside.
Exactly right, as he's doing it. But if Christopher Barry accepts this plea deal, Marion Christopher Barry, it is likely that he will get jail time that will go into the election period.
That's possible. I mean, the prosecutor said that the deal expires on March 6th. The way these
He
things
has to
work,
accept it
Well,
or
that's
reject it by March.
this
Right, and
one,
if-
but
if he-
another one could come along.
another one could come along, but I don't know what the prosecutors are thinking, but they're not going to be strung along for months and months so he can finish his
But
political
here,
campaign.
what you mainly reported though is that a trial was set for May 6th.
Right. If he wants to go to trial,
It's
that'll
after the
right.
election, and
And
that's after the April 28th
Right.
election. So he can string it out to then, and they could always then try to make a plea deal afterwards. I just think the problem for Marion Christopher Barry is that while he does not have the community work that his father had. His father had decades of civil rights work, community work, police troubles, and all those things, fighting for the community. Christopher has not built that. I do think, though, if the media and other people jump on him and try to make him the worst possible person, that would help him win.
there'll be a backlash.
A backlash to help him
You know,
win. When in
his
fact, they should
name,
be
you know,
asking him, Christopher,
his name
what
has
have you
been
done
in-
for the city?
Right, and his name has generally been in the paper for not great stuff. And you know, and there's a tremendous amount of goodwill out there for Christopher from people who know him, know his family, know his father,
And
know
want
his
him to
mother,
do well.
and they want him to do well, and they wonder, does that involve being in public life and all of that entails?
So his father tried to get him in more involved in doing more than just showing up at the turkey giveaways. And Christopher has a small painting company, but he can't point to a lot of things he's done in the community of Ward 8, which needs a strong advocate, and that could be
Well, there will be more on this subject in the Washington Post in the coming days.
right. And then there's what, 15 or 16 candidates.
16, maybe 15 if one gets knocked off, but it doesn't look like that. 16 candidates.
Last month, DC Chancellor of Public Schools, Kai Henderson, announced the Empowering Males of Color initiative, which would include mentoring grants and opening an all-boys prep school. There have been some questions raised on the council having to do with the plan's gender inequality. Councilmember Mary J. asking the aforementioned District Attorney General Racine to provide an opinion about the legality of this plan to dedicate $20 million in extra funds to support minority male students. Tom Sherwood, I guess she is fearful that this could be a violation of Title IX.
Mary Che has gone to some lengths to say, look, the mayor and the chancellor want to spend $20 million to maybe open a boys-only high school and do some other intervention with African-American males and Latinos. But she says that we may violate, she asked the Attorney General, does that violate the federal law in terms of equal opportunity Section 9 and all that. She says she's for lots of stuff, but she's not sure this is the right way to go. The chancellor and the mayor reasserted, this is a crisis situation. I said earlier, all the school kids are in the hospital. The boys are in the emergency room.
Yeah, I mean, it's politically, it's a fascinating issue. You've got you've got the representative from the richest, whitest part of the city standing up and saying, I don't think that this initiative for poor black kids should go forward. And she is very poor black males, excuse me, and she's very forthright in saying, "Listen, I believe that more should be done for the children are not performing, but we can't forget about the children." And but still the optics of that are pretty shocking. And I know people in the Wilson building, including some of her colleagues, are sort of scratching their head and wondering, but the truth is she has a point legally. And looking at some of the cases around the country, the federal enforcers of Title IX and the Civil Rights Act have over the years looked at these things very closely.
But why make it? Why not ask the Attorney General what he thinks? But why make it a public? They released the letter and all of that. David Grosso, who is the chairman of the Education Committee, has said he understands the issue, but he says, we have a crisis situation with our young males in this city, and we need to do all these things and not pick them apart.
Mary Che, of course, constitutional law professor, no shrinking violet, and I guess she decided she had something to say on this, and she was going to say it. And
she wants the public to know she's doing her due diligence.
That's right. Kenyon McDuffie noted, he said, I've got two girls. I understand the issue about girls, but we have to move forward in an emergency matter on the males.
The Franklin School site, according to the city paper, Mayor Muriel Bowser has pulled the plug on plans there was supposed to be a new museum at that Franklin School on the corner of 13th and K Streets Northwest. It had been awarded under Mayor Vincent Gray. The Institute for Contemporary Expression was supposed to be developing the museum there. Some administration officials expressed concern that the project was not meeting its fundraising goals. The Institute says it definitely has. What do you understand to be the thinking behind Mayor Muriel Bowser's desire to shelve this plan and opt for something else that we don't have a clue what it's likely to be yet?
Well,
I can hear the arts community is quite upset.
Absolutely. I mean, what the Bowser administration has said is simply that they didn't think the project was going to work financially. This is a project and basically a nonprofit endeavor that is based on the raising on private fundraising, and they represented in meetings with reporters that they hadn't met fundraising goals. Now the folks behind this project had said, well, wait a second here. we weren't set to start raising funds until it had gone through the council, and you guys didn't even ask us what our fundraising was. So how do you know what we've raised and then to turn around and say it's because of the fundraising that you're canceling this? So a lot of suspicion.
And part of the deal was to start the fundraising after the deal was in place.
Right. I mean, you can get pledges and all that, but no one's going to write a check until this thing
Cut to the chase. The suspicion.
The point is, everyone, all the suspicions revolve. This is a tribal thing. They don't. This is a Vince Gray deal. We don't like Vince Gray's people. Vince Gray's picks, and we're going to get Muriel Bowser's pick in here.
No, there's another kind of suspicion.
The summary of this is that this is not the only project that she has stopped. I think there's like 4 or 5, maybe a half dozen projects that she has stopped, and she says she wants to look at them. That's a reasonable thing.
Well, this is the only one that she stopped entirely.
Right. Stopped entirely. He's going to rebid.
Right. The other ones says, we're reviewing.
All right, but she has stopped a number of development projects. So it's up to her as the new mayor. This is a show me opportunity for the mayor. Whatever she does going forward, if she just simply changes developers somewhere and people who support her suddenly get these projects as opposed to people who supported the mayor, all that will be subject to politics and discussion. But she now is making a strong statement, stronger than she ever did as the chairman of the Economics Committee itself, to say she's going to change and adjust the development of the city, and it's up to her to show it's going to be done on an above board thing.
The other suspicion, the one coming from the arts community, is that, look, this was a nonprofit that was developing a museum in a very prominent site in the District of Columbia, and there are a lot of developers who would like to see a for-profit institution, or who would like to be able to develop an institution that goes on that site for a profit. They make large contributions to campaigns and the like. That's the
developer. The exterior of the building is only looking as nice as it does there at 13th and K Street, because the developer behind it, in getting the rights to build that big building behind it, agreed to do the exterior of the building. The interior is falling apart. But it's not necessarily. There's no room really to expand and grow it. So a commercial development opportunity may not be as good as some people think.
When the Gray administration went through this process, they solicited for-profit uses too, and there were some for-profit proposals, mainly boutique hotels, things like that. And like Tom said, this is a challenging building. It's historically protected inside and out. The outside is in decent shape. The inside is not. It's going to require tens of millions of dollars of investment, and
no parking.
I would point out that the Bowser administration made an interesting comment, this week after when they pulled this proposal, which has said we want to make this something accessible to people of all 8 wards, and they talked about Muriel Bowser's vision here. But this was something. This was an art going to be a center for the arts, something that people of all from all walks were going to be able to enjoy. If it becomes a boutique hotel or offices, that doesn't fit into that.
To be a lot of
That's it. Mayor Bowser has asserted herself in economic development. We'll see how it plays out.
Let's talk about asserting in economic development. She's already earned a reputation as being cautious in fiscal matters. She's put spending on hold in some areas, introduced a hiring freeze, but some members of the council don't like that at all. They say the 2014 report is proof that things are going well and that key programs are being affected. What's going on?
Well, this would have been a good subject to bring up with the chairman, because he's pretty hot about it. But, Muriel Bowser came in and she's put certain budget initiatives on hold, and those budget initiatives just happen to be things that are important to particular council members. But she has initiatives of her own. Just this week, we talked about the homeless. Hiring these navigators. That's a little bit of money, but she announced another $5 million expansion of the summer jobs program, which is, of course, always a big priority for DC mayors. And she's asked the council to spend $5 million extra dollars on this program,
plus the $20 million school,
while at the same time not keeping the holds on some of this other funding, including these social workers at the DC General Hospital. And now, you know, this has annoyed Phil Mendelson to no end because he said it. I'm really annoyed by this.
Well, the fact is, Mayor Bowser is in fact asserting herself as the mayor, and she's going to be putting her budget out later this year. And we've indicated in some stories now that she's going to cut way back on the streetcar system, which some of the council members don't like, some do. I mean, she really is trying to assert herself as mayor. This is a really interesting time in the city. And it's too bad Mike DeBonis is bailing on us going up to the Hill.
Well, he's bailing on us, but not before he gets the opportunity to explain what Statehood Senator Paul Strauss is doing in Iowa.
Paul Strauss is going to be in Iowa this weekend. He's
for those who are not aware of it, he's a statehood senator. Some call it a shadow senator. His purpose for existing as an elected official is to try to win statehood for the district.
Right, and win attention to the cause, which he's done successfully. He got me to write a story about it. He got MSNBC to write a story about it. He's going to be addressing the Polk County Democrats. Polk County is where Des Moines, Iowa is. And he's hoping that people talk about statehood as we get, you know, toward 2016, and we have all these candidates coming through, presidential candidates coming through Iowa, and good for him for getting some attention. He sent me a clip yesterday of the morning show in Des Moines. They had a little, you know, discussion of this, so it's better than nothing.
And Tom Sherwood, Mike DeBonis is reporting that the November 4th general election, a complaint often repeated or initiated on this broadcast by Tom Sherwood, absent poll workers, outdated equipment, uneven access for disabled voters, all of this from the DC Auditor's Office in the last election.
Yes, we need, again, just as Metro needs and other agencies need, Department of Employment Services, I've said before on this program, we need for the mayor and the council to take a serious look at the Board of Elections. The staffers there work very hard to try to get things done. They can be overwhelmed. I don't know the last time we've actually checked the roles of all the people on there. It just seems to me a whole management review and revision of the Board of Elections and Ethics needs to be done. And I don't know that they have the resources or the political support to do it.
Well, do they? You have 20 seconds.
Well, the council member McDuffie said outright, "Well, I want personnel changes there." All three members.
Not personnel.
All three members of the Board of Elections are on expired terms. Muriel Bowser will get a chance to appoint 3 new members, so change could be coming.
Mike DeBonis, he's our guest analyst today, a reporter of the Washington Post, moving on to cover Capitol Hill. Thank you for joining us. Good luck.
Thanks, Kojo.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspaper. Tom Sherwood, always a pleasure.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Rest in peace, David Carr. Thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Namdi. Coming up Monday on the Kojo and Namdi Show, the Old Dominion and questions about open government. Recent police incidents sparked debate about whether Virginia condones a culture of secrecy. Then, rethinking DC's fight against HIV/AIDS. Strategies evolve for tackling one of the region's biggest public health challenges. The Kojo and Namdi Show, noon till 2 Monday on WAMU 88.5 and streaming at kojoshow.org.